If you want 2026 to be the best year of your life, please watch this video. Most entrepreneurs enter a new year with hope instead of a plan. You have data, you have goals, and you have a massive to-do list, but you have zero clarity on which tasks actually move the needle. You're working harder, but your bank account isn't growing because you're guessing. And guessing is the fastest way to stay stuck. What if you could hire a top 0.1% founder in your industry to grill you on your business and tell you the exact three things to focus on to multiply your revenue? I recently spent a 4-hour flight doing exactly this, but I didn't have to hire anyone. I just used AI. I ran one specific detailed prompt through Gemini, ChatGPT, and DeepSeek. By the time I landed, the fog was gone. I have a precise roadmap for 2026 that I'm 95% confident in. I call this my AI co-founder prompt, and today I'm giving you the exact framework so you can turn AI into a world-class business partner that stops you from making $10,000 mistakes and helps you truly reach the next level. Now, most people use AI as a faster search engine. They ask for a generic marketing plan, and AI gives them generic fluff stuff. That is glazing, not coaching. A real co-founder doesn't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear. They find the flaws in your logic and the leaks in your funnel. This prompt completely changes the dynamic. You probably have not used AI in this way before. It stops AI from being a yes man, agreeing with everything you say, and turns AI into a strategic sparring partner that demands data and challenges your assumptions. Real quick, if you don't know me, my name's Sabrina Ramonov. I previously built and sold an AI company for millions of dollars, and now I teach millions of people AI for free. So make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below if you enjoy this video. Here's the full prompt. I know it looks really long, but there's a reason for it. It's because we're providing so much data and context to AI so that its output and feedback and questions are actually going to be helpful. So I'm going to talk through the prompt at a high level, and all these parts highlighted in red, you're going to want to replace this with information that is specific to your business and context, okay? The very first line says you're a top 0.1% tech founder of a multi-billion-dollar rocket ship startup with viral word of mouth growth. Now, you'll want to tweak this so that it makes sense for your industry. Maybe you're not doing a tech startup. Maybe you have a different goal in mind. Totally okay. Just replace this with what makes sense for your industry and business goals. The context section starts off by explaining what your product is. So you'll want to insert that, your highest retention user group, what your goal is for 2026, and what your overall vision is for your company or product. The next set of information to supply is your revenue, your churn metrics, your funnel, your expenses, what's currently been working in terms of marketing and sales channels, and marketing and sales activities you're considering for 2026. So in my case, I put screenshots from Stripe, which is what I use to track revenue and churn. And I also put information about my funnel. If you use Google Analytics or whatever you use to track this information, you'll want to replace these numbers here. Whatever you use to track expenses, you'll want to grab it from that tool and put it in here. I personally use an AI tool called puzzle.io that classifies lots of expenses for me. And then the most important sections is like, what's actually working for you? What have you tried? So you'll want to replace these bullet points in red with what worked for you in 2025. What marketing channels did you test? Which ones worked? Which ones did you double down on? Any specific numbers you can share? And then in 2026, put a really long list of everything you're considering doing for 2026 based on what you learned in 2025. So in my case, I'm considering things like A/B testing my website copy, which I literally have never done, even though I've had 1.6 million website views in 2025. I'm considering more short form influencer marketing. I'm considering breaking into different partner ecosystems. I'm considering AI SEO. I'm considering Facebook ads. I'm considering newsletter ad sponsorships. Everything you're kind of considering that's currently on your to-do list for 2026, just dump that here. Okay, and the last step of the prompt is telling AI what we want it to do. Your task is to identify the top 3 most important things I should focus on in order to reach my monthly recurring revenue goal by the end of 2026. So you'll want to insert that here. There's always a million things I could be doing, but I need to know the 3 most important things that will multiply my current monthly revenue. Ask me clarifying questions 1 at a time until you are 95% confident in your answer. The most important part is actually this last sentence here. It's forcing AI to ask you clarifying questions one by one. And that's how you're going to enter a much more strategic conversation with AI. It actually forces you to reflect on your assessment, your data, and your strategy. And in the process, you're teaching AI all of this context so it can make a much more tailored and improved recommendation. It's going to dig into all the numbers you provide. It's going to call you out when there are gaps in your data or when you're making leaps in your assumptions that aren't justified. It's going to be so much better. So don't forget to feed the beast, right? Provide as much information as you're willing and able to, because this will help AI be that much better of a sparring partner with you. And then the last key point here is it's really, really tough, but it's so important to narrow it down to no more than 3 things. So you might have a huge list of 50 things that you're trying to figure out for 2026. Many of us already have super long to-do lists, but you really need to remove as much as possible, because once you identify the top 3 most important things, everything outside of those most important things distracts you from doing really, really well. Now, the next trick I'm going to show you is going to make a huge difference. Most people get stuck using just one AI tool, but they don't realize you could actually put the same exact prompt into multiple AI tools in parallel and let them take you different directions. What's really interesting is to see where their input and opinions converge and also where they diverge. Okay. So what you're going to do is open 3 different AI tools. You can choose the ones you like. In my case, I've opened Gemini, ChatGPT, and DeepSeek. And one neat thing that I like to do, if you're using Google Chrome, you can right click this tab, click add tab to new split view. Okay. You can then open ChatGPT or DeepSeek, whichever one, in the secondary view. So now you just have a split screen of 2 LLMs. But I actually like to use 3 to get a third opinion. So what I'm going to do is just narrow this, and then I'm going to pull DeepSeek out and give it its own panel over here. The reason why I like to use 3 is because then there's a tiebreaker, right? We'll have consensus when 2 out of 3 LLMs agree on a particular opinion. Okay, so next what we're going to do is copy paste this entire prompt. Okay, if you don't have this yet, here, let me zoom out here. Take a screenshot of this. You can drop it into ChatGPT to transcribe just the text. Okay. What I'm going to do is copy paste it. And I'm also going to tell AI to assume reasonable numbers so that I'm not giving away any confidential information. For the point of this exercise, you can assume the numbers have been filled out. So I'm going to copy paste the prompt here and then just say, assume reasonable numbers for this example. Okay. And then what you're going to do is just copy paste that same exact prompt into each LLM like this. Okay. This is going to jumpstart our goal, which is to prioritize the 3 most important activities in 2026. Now what's going to happen is each of these LLMs are going to ask you specific questions. What's already really interesting is DeepSeek asked a very different question from Gemini and ChatGPT, whereas Gemini and Chat ask the same exact question, right? So just for the sake of this example, I'm just going to throw out numbers here. These are not my actual revenue numbers, okay? So I'm just going to answer each question one by one. So today, let's say I'm at 50K MRR and I want to hit, let's say, by end of 2026. I'm going to copy paste that to Chat because it asked the same thing. However, DeepSeek asked, you mentioned non-technical users who want to make 1 week of content 1 minute. Do these users currently exist, or is this a completely new persona you haven't cracked yet? I would say no, these users are not currently in my highest retention user group. By the way, one shortcut here is you can use speech to text. So normally, instead of like typing all this out, I would probably read all of this out loud. Although on my flight, I did type it out since there were people around me. So here I want to pause. The process I just showed you of going back and forth with each one, you're going to keep doing that for like 20 questions at least and really, really get in there. But what's already interesting is that each AI model has already diverged in the information it's emphasizing and is trying to get clarity on. So Gemini here is asking about my conversion rates from visitor to trial and trial to paid. ChatGPT is asking about my highest retention user group and what percentage of my revenue comes from that group. And then DeepSeek over here is asking about my product. Does my product already have certain features, or is that still in development? So what you're going to find is like each of these AI models are going to emphasize different pieces of information, and each one is going to going to take you down very different directions. And so what's really interesting is if you go down those different directions and the answers ultimately converge to a set of the three priorities that are most important in 2026 to help you achieve your goals. So I'm not going to do any more examples here, but what you should do now is just keep answering questions, and you can push back. You can take an answer you like from ChatGPT, copy paste it over to DeepSeek and say, well, what do you think about this assessment? Right. So I love doing that. I love playing the AI models off of each other. And just remember, at the end of the day, this is a self-reflection exercise, but you're using AI to spar with you, to ask you better questions, to force you to dig deeper, dig into data, and question your assumptions. When I finished this 4-hour session on my flight, I didn't just have a list of tasks, I had conviction, and that is priceless. I knew exactly where to spend my time and money, and I went deep. I was running SQL queries to get data to answer their questions and make sure all of my assessments were based in empirical evidence, not just opinion. At the end of the day, clarity is the ultimate competitive advantage. While everyone else is trying everything and trying to see what works, you need to be focused on the top 3 things that actually matter and deliver ROI and results. So don't be afraid to dig in, answer their questions, play the AI models off of each other, ask ChatGPT what it thinks about DeepSeek's assessments, ask Gemini what it thinks about ChatGPT's answers, and really, really dig into this self-reflection exercise.